Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric E. Lopkin. And right on the first on the docket, it's got to be the debate. Without me saying anything, listeners are always interested in the good doctor's analysis. So just take it
Yeah,
from there.
the debate
And
was
let me
in.
just throw in one thing. Hold on. I believe this was not a game changer, but a consequential event that is really putting Trump in a very good position. All yours.
Yeah, the debate was interesting because on the face of it, it was much more civil than most debates have been recently, except for when Tim Walz went after Donald Trump. And it really does show that the entire Democratic strategy is still Trump derangement syndrome, orange man bad.
Yes, I would agree with that. I also think there was a that Vance achieved more than achieved his objective. He was humanized. He came off as intelligent, compassionate, empathetic, and that's not hyperbole. I really truly believe he pulled that off. He also looked better, not just because he's younger. He looked more poised, whereas at times Waltz was. He got better, but a little unhinged, not unhinged, a little certainly nervous at the beginning, and even confusing things that he didn't really mean to do, like confusing Iran with Israel. And again, it wasn't a, he was just nervous, okay? But he was definitely a lot more ill at ease than Vance. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a big night for both of them, especially since this was, for the most part, the introduction of both of them to the American people. More people were likely to watch the debate. I haven't seen the numbers yet. Than watched either of them at the Republican and Democratic conventions. So this
Hmm.
was really the first time that people were introduced to them. Not only did Vance show up as poised, I'll go even further. Vance showed up as presidential. I think he made himself look like the most capable candidate of all four.
100%. And there was an editorial by a conservative publication deeming him the heir apparent to the MAGA movement. And you know something? Donald Trump Jr. and the family, his Trump's kids, they were. I'm sorry. I think they were. I think it was a spot on move having J.D. Vance. It's the whole thing of yes, Trump's getting a little older. He only can do and will do one term, and it's a great um, legacy play.
Yes, and for Vance, this was his moment. Social media has been buzzing all day with folks going, "Oh, I didn't know much about Vance, but now I'm certainly voting for him and Trump." He
Yes, and I
actually
think that's why. Yes, that's why it was consequential. And doing research for this show, Politico, which I would have to say Dr. Lotbian is a little left leaning, correct?
yes.
They were, they basically were more pro Vance than some conservative publications, basically saying he kicked ass.
The media in general, and it's probably killing them to say it, but CNN said Vance was the winner. MSNBC said Vance was the winner. It was unanimous across the media who won this. And honestly, I think it comes up, and I'm going to show my age. Not that I was alive at the time, but I've seen footage from this. Waltz reminded me of Richard Nixon in his first debate with John F. Kennedy.
Yes, I've seen clips of being in the educational field, and you're 100% correct. Ill at ease. However, the only distinguishing characteristic I would say to this is that when people listened to Nixon on radio, they thought he won. I still think if you listen to Waltz on the radio, you did not think he won.
No,
Minor point,
if
minor,
you
minor,
yeah,
but
if you
still.
listen to Waltz without seeing him, he still didn't carry it off. His voice, the fact that he
Nervous.
kept, yeah, the fact that he kept several times switch terms like Israel and Iran, which, let's face it, that's a pretty dangerous thing to switch. It was it was all nerves, but it showed that he's not ready for prime time. He's not ready. They keep saying, well, the vice president on day one has to be ready to step into the Oval Office. Waltz is not ready. And
yes, I think
mean,
in a very close. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Vance did one thing. It was probably overall the right thing to do, but I had hoped he would have gone a different way. The first question out of the bag was about Israel, and Waltz spent 15 seconds sputtering and not answer, and avoiding the question, and then went off about all of the different people who've said Trump should not be president, including J.D. Vance from 2016. And when Vance had gotten his turn, I really wish he would have said, you know who says Waltz should not be in the White House or anywhere near the White House? His own family.
Whoa, that would have been that would have been okay. He already won, but that would have been like one of those you're no John Kennedy. Yes.
Yeah, it's because Waltz's family is campaigning against him for Trump Vance.
The only good thing I could say about Waltz is and his prospects for being president or vice president. It's a really good thing that you have the limousines and stuff because I certainly don't want to be anywhere around him when he's driving. And a couple cocktails that can be dangerous.
Absolutely.
So yes, and I do think. Go ahead.
And I honestly believe the biggest loser of the night was CBS. They weren't as bad as ABC. But even before the debate had started, they dug themselves a hole when they said they weren't going to fact check the candidates. And then Norah O'Donnell started talking about the state of the country and got the facts wrong.
Well, Norah O'Donnell, we've talked about. You probably don't remember. You're a busy guy, but I've never been a big fan of her. Do you know why? Because she is the prototypical, stereotypical limousine liberal that grew up in Georgetown, went to Georgetown U actually. Her biggest challenge ever in life, her biggest disappointment, and it almost crushed her, is that she couldn't go out with a quarterback of her private high school. She had to settle for the running back, and she had to seek psychiatric attention. I'm just kidding. But yeah, a total.
Don't you feel so bad for her for that? Yeah,
she's just been through hell and back. Yeah, I'm
but
sure. She go ahead.
The one time they did try to fact check Vance, Vance threw it in their faces and made them look foolish. And after the debate, posted on social media the report from the Federal Reserve that backed up what he was saying.
Yes, I thought, and in fact, I talked about Politico. They had losers, winners, and losers, and I have only the losers because winners only was obviously Vance, but some minor things, right? They had losers. I love this. The moderators, we've already discussed that. And then they have Tim Waltz, no longer the media phenom, which I think is very, very important because he got the gig, a 50-50 proposition because of number one, anti-Semitism, and number two, I saw him. I didn't even know who he was. He was on those morning shows, and he was a pretty good advocate. He came up with they're just weird. I think that's completely gone, gone, to use a baseball metaphor. Do you agree?
It is gone. And you have to wonder, though, because the appearances that you're mentioning all occurred prior to him being chosen as the vice presidential candidate. Since becoming the vice presidential candidate, the only media appearance he's made prior to the debate was the CNN interview he did with Kamala Harris.
And he appeared nervous.
Right. So if he was such a media phenom, why were they keeping him shut in the basement? And honestly, I think, Kamala did this right, and Biden did this right. Because no president wants their vice president to outshine them. So Biden chose somebody dumber than he was, and
Which
Harris
is hard,
and
which is like finding the Hope Diamond. Go
right,
ahead.
and Harris chose somebody dumber than she is.
Which is even more difficult. It's like finding a ninth planet. There you go. But yeah, I think in a close election, I'll go out on a limb, Doctor Lopkin. I believe that it is now Trump's election to lose. If he plays it, if he can play prevent defense and not step on it, I think he's in a very good position to win, especially when we have missteps like, well, the debate wasn't a misstep, but a victory. And then you have the border visit by Ms. Harris. Again, a genius, and you were correct in saying, as always, but as saying that Biden had to find someone dumber. Well, he did, and that's like finding the needle in the haystack. She visits the border. She's getting very valuable information on her iPhone in real time. Unfortunately, it's not plugged up to her headset, and she's the middle class darling is wearing a $60,000 necklace at the border, no less, rubbing elbows with people getting paid 80,000. But whatever, your thoughts?
Yeah,
Didn't go well,
it,
Carl.
it, it did not go well. I honestly don't think there was any way she could make it go well. She is responsible. She is the border czar. As much as she wants to, say, oh, no, I was never the border czar, we all watched as they said she is going to take responsibility. We all watched as she said, oh, I am going to get into the root causes.
I love the root cause. That was a classic. Yeah, I think actually you're 100% correct. I believe she was ill advised. Won't be the first time. She should have just left that alone. Just move on. And it did bring up the whole situation where we have 13,000, not just criminals but convicted murderers floating around. Not bad, huh?
Yeah, we have done virtually no vetting of these people when they come in. And that is the big problem. And, the Biden Harris administration's whole retort was, well, we need more border patrol. We need more
Mm-hmm.
money for border patrol so that they can handle it. It's like, no, you need to stop letting people come in. The immigration laws are very simple. Number one, if you are seeking asylum, you are supposed to seek asylum in the first country you get to, which means if you're coming over our southern border, if you did not seek asylum in Mexico and get asylum there, forget it. You're not even supposed to be considered here. Never mind just let into the country.
It's okay. Only a low information slash low IQ voter doesn't get the fact that Harris Biden screwed it up. Things were in control, more than in control. Okay. And even under Obama, things looked splendidly compared to what they unleashed. They essentially invited everyone in the world to get freebies. They encouraged it, and it's on them. So, sometimes you just walk away from things, just call it a day. I think any more engagement from her on the border just looks ridiculous. And I actually think that I'll find a little bit of fault with Vance in terms of the debate. I think when Waltz brings that up, he should have said, no, no, no. The bill you're talking about lets 5,000 illegals in a day. And are you good with that, Mr. Waltz? But it's for another discussion. But you do look at the polls, and post hurricane, I think that's part of it. Georgia North Carolina was supposed, I never believed it, in the Harris camp. That's flipped because you basically have no one home during a huge environmental and regional disaster.
Yeah, the Biden administration has been AWOL in terms of its response to Helene, which, I mean, to be perfectly honest, it's not terribly surprising. You have Biden, who is incoherent at best. You've
Yeah.
got Harris, who's not in Washington. She's out on the campaign trail, ignoring her responsibilities as vice president. So there literally is nobody in charge of the federal government. I mean, based on the recent cabinet meeting we saw, Jill is the one running this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so far from the truth. But I think forget about if she could actually do something because I'm a strong believer she cannot. She's incompetent. But and again, ill advised. Okay, the border was ill advised. The $60,000 necklace was ill advised. But um, basically, not going to the scene, throwing out like Trump did, in terms when he was bottles of water, doing something except doing a 60,000-foot aerial view was again a misstep.
And part of the problem is, all she has done is she read a prepared statement about Helene. She did the
Shocking.
same. She did the same thing with the attack with on Israel. She read a prepared statement. When she went to the border, she read a prepared statement. That's all she's doing. Anytime she's asked a question, her answer starts out, well, I was born into a middle
Oh
class
God,
family. Like this is an answer. And RFK Jr. gave this hysterical speech
I saw it. It was
where
great.
where he said that this is her answer to everything. So the next time your boss asks you, why didn't you work on this project? You tell him, well, I was born into a middle class family. If you're caught speeding and the cop pulls you over, you tell the cop, well, I was born into a
It was
middle
great.
class family.
I think it's fantastic. I think it's even go. You're in the consulting business at the top of the game. I think you may want to tell your clients, hey, you get up for a presentation and you effed up because you didn't prepare. Just say, okay, you're on, John. You're on, Nancy. Let me just begin by I was born in a middle class. Yeah, no
Right.
problem. It's perfectly fine. Not a big deal at all. I think what is a big deal though is it's a lack of momentum and enthusiasm. You have that song Fighter that's now still on tops on the charts. I think that, yeah, the polls are not looking good for Harris. And you look at PA now as well, which all he has to do is win that and it's game over. But the enthusiasm gap is palatable.
Yeah,
Palatable.
there is a huge enthusiasm gap. Nobody is thrilled with Harris. Most of the folks that are supporting Harris are primarily supporting her because she is a black woman. And a lot of this is misinformation. I'm not talking about her being a black woman being misinformation, but I actually saw this morning Lawrence Jones was at a diner
Yeah, I saw
and
that. Excellent.
he was talking with people who were supporting both sides. And one of the women said the main reason that she is supporting Kamala Harris is because she likes to vote and she doesn't want her vote taken away by a dictator coming in and not leaving the office. Well, the fact of the matter is Trump already left the office once. We've seen it.
Yeah, I
So
saw that lady, a true Mensa candidate. No question about it. She's working for NASA, and she probably has. Do you want more beans with that entree? I'm sure. Yes. So and there is a huge enthusiasm gap, and I also think it's going to increase because you have things aren't going really in for Kamala. You have the port strike. I mean, these things require action. You have Dumbia, who's incapable of anything, but you think if you had a really capable person like Vance, you could. step up, or someone else who's a woman could step up and get involved, it's a great opportunity to prove yourself. It would be the opposite of her. She would talk about, we got a serious strike here, and she would just say, well, I was born in a middle class family. People love their lawns. I mean, it's so that's a huge impact on the economy. And then you have Israel. The world's on fire. I want your comments on that. I think Israel is going to strike heavy and hard. Okay, and I'm sorry, I don't want to harp on something, but where's Dickie Blumenthal and Chucky Schumer, two
Okay,
dyed in the wool Jewish people?
you put a lot into that comment, so let's take a step back and start with the port strike. Okay. First of all, this is going to be devastating to the U.S. economy. It is estimated by J.P. Morgan that it is going to cost the American people $5 billion a day. That's a huge hit for the economy, especially since we're not in the greatest place right now. It's not that strong an economy. It would take very little to get us to teeter over the edge. This may do it. Second of all, Biden could have avoided this. He could have said, no, you can't strike. But he was afraid to offend the unions because, not that the union members have been such big supporters of Harris. They aren't, but she needs the union support. On top of that, though, this is a devastating strike for no good reason. And Biden should have stepped in and said no. What this strike is a group of 47,000 people, half of which make more than $150,000 a year, 20% of which make over $250,000
and I think the
a
head
year.
of the union makes like $750 and drives a Bentley.
Right. And they are asking for an 80% pay raise. That right there is bad enough. But the big problem is they are fighting automation. They do not want automation at the ports. Well, guess what? The United States is basically the only country left that hasn't automated our ports. The longshoremen are buggy whip manufacturers. They were important in their time, but that time is over. And they are causing more economic damage, not just with the strike, because if they do get their demands, first of all of those costs are going to be passed on to the American consumer because it's going to cost more for goods to come in. It's going to cost more for raw materials to come in for American manufacturers. There is nothing good that is coming from this strike for the American people, all because a few people that are making good money don't want to learn a skill.
I agree on the economic side, yes, but the optics side is as important in an election year. You have Biden, he's not running anymore, got it, but he's asleep at the switch. There's nothing he can do in any way. It just that whole, and again, I did put a lot in one message, so to speak, but it goes into the whole thing. This is a shit show internationally, domestically. Things are out of control. And being older than you, there was the same situation that happened in 1980. The polls were really, really close between Carter and Reagan. Many polls had Carter ahead. And then at the last minute, figuratively, things just exploded the other way because people were going, it's just too out of control. Gas lines, hostages, economies in the shitter. I think we see, as Yogi Berra would say, it's deja vu all over again.
Yes. Now, you mentioned Israel as well. The first question in the debate to Tim Walz was, would you approve of Israel making a preemptive strike on Iran? And of course, he made the right noises about Israel having the right to defend itself, but he never actually said if he would support a preemptive strike. He avoided the
He wouldn't.
question altogether. Based on what the administration has done so far, I have to assume they wouldn't, because they've been trying to get Israel to pull back all along. Israel has finally said, enough is enough. You know what? We're not listening to you, Biden. We are moving forward.
Okay,
And
let me
if
Ask the great let me ask the great doctor why. I think I know why, but I want to hear it from you.
But there's a couple of reasons. First of all, we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of October 7th. A year later, they need to be able to show they've made some progress. Well, over the past few weeks, they've pretty much crippled both Hezbollah and Hamas. Now, Iran is bombing them. Remember, Iran just a few days ago in front of the UN claimed they were the peacemaker. They were trying to unify the Middle East. The fact that Iran took shots at Israel because Israel went over after Hamas and Hezbollah, who had already been attacking Israel. So these were retaliatory strikes. It just unveiled to anybody who hadn't been paying attention previously that, yes, Iran is behind all of this.
I also think it's a calculated effort on Israel, looking at the landscape, betting on a Trump victory, and basically ignoring numbnuts.
Well, a lot of the world right now is betting on a Trump victory.
Yes, I would
Kamala
agree with that.
Kamala Harris made a comment that the world is laughing at us that we might have Trump, as president again. And European leaders came out and said, no, nobody is laughing about Trump. They're actually looking forward to working with Trump.
100% agreed. Very interesting. But again, I wanted you to touch base on what happened to Richard Blumenthal and Chucky Schumer. I didn't hear anything from them
No,
about Israel.
it is amazing how quiet the Jewish senators have been. And to be fair, the Congress as a whole did release a statement, but you would think that especially Blumenthal and Schumer, who both of them never met a camera they didn't like,
They're
you would have
married
thought
to the media, yes.
you would have thought they would have come out supporting Netanyahu, supporting Israel, and that's something else. Netanyahu's approval rating, first of all, in Israel, and second of all, globally, has skyrocketed in the past 2 months because,
Globally?
yes,
Excellent.
because he is taking command. He is taking care of business. There was footage that came out a few days ago of Syrians dancing in the streets after Israel took out the leadership of Hezbollah. The Iranian people are cheering Israel.
I think you have a really great point because there's several experts who say that yes, Iran is in a very precarious position. Um, if things go the way hopefully they will, that whole regime is just is a house of cards.
It is a house of cards, and we actually just saw the son of the Shah, who was deposed back in 1980. His son called for Iranian soldiers who are on the fence, who are not sure about their leadership, to support Israel and overthrow the Ayatollah. And the Ayatollah, by the way, is now in hiding in a bunker because he's terrified.
I think this, and we can't get ahead of ourselves, but if things go a certain way, this could be a whole new era in the Middle East. It could be the dinosaurs are the Iranians, and there's a whole group of people, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, others, that come together for economic and peaceful reasons. It could be a whole new era and a amazing era for Israel, thanks to their leadership, unlike our lack of leadership. But it also was kind of interesting when you talk about leadership and where we're going. You look at the second husband who had sex with his babysitter. Now there's a report that he slapped around a girlfriend, another nice liberal, what social justice warrior. Gee, what's going on here?
Yeah, we're seeing all of this come out, and it's not new. It really started with Harvey Weinstein. We're seeing all of these major Democratic figures, major donors, major party members.
P
All
Diddy.
of a sudden, P. Diddy, all of the skeletons are starting to come out of the closet. And I honestly think all of this would have come out 8 years ago if it wasn't for the politicalization of the Me Too movement. When they started saying, well, no, we can't unveil Democrats, we have to, that was when the movement fell apart. If they had gone after everybody who was capable and accused of this horrible behavior, maybe this stuff would have come out sooner.
I would 100% agree with that, but I do think it's really more than relevant in a political season, especially when a campaign is based on social justice. That you have the second husband who not only had sex with a babysitter, which is less than redeemable, but also slapped around his girlfriend. I don't think that plays well in Peoria, but that's just my humble opinion.
No,
Um,
the
and
thing that makes it relevant though is that the Democrats have been pushing the issue of character. That's their big attack on Donald Trump. He's a horrible person. You can't vote for this horrible person. Well, guess what? None of the Democrats seem to be any better. All of their skeletons are starting to come out.
possibly worse. Um, and you talk about the political landscape, and we do agree, I believe, that the momentum, certainly not over, but the momentum is in Trump's favor, especially after the VP debate. And is there any correlation between an increase in momentum and last week's Saturday Night Live?
I have no doubt that there is a connection. For those of you who missed it, Saturday Night Live kicked off its 50th anniversary, its 50th season, which is nothing to sneeze at. And what they did, especially in the cold open, was they brought back Saturday Night Live alum and basically showed two rallies, a Harris rally and a Trump rally. And they devastated Kamala Harris. They devastated Tim Walz. They devastated Joe Biden. In fact, the impression of Joe Biden was done by Dana Carvey was absolutely
Right.
hysterical. Although I thought it was very reminiscent of his Ross Perot impression. But they
Hmm.
still went after Trump, but they went after both sides equally, which is what they needed to do. My only critique of it was I think it was Daryl Hammond who was doing Trump. I didn't think he did that great a job, but I suspect they don't have someone who does a really good Trump impression, which is why they used to keep bringing Alec Baldwin in to do it.
Well said. Also, speaking on the subject of momentum, George Logan, for our listeners across the nation, probably obviously doesn't resonate, but for being in Connecticut, he's a Republican running against an incumbent Democrat. And he, according to very, very reliable polls, is now only down 2 points. Your thoughts?
Yeah, you're seeing this across the country. Logan is a
He's
perfect
squatting, I call it.
Yeah, Logan is a perfect example. And in fact, seats that, quite frankly, I still don't believe are really up for grabs. For example, Rosa DeLauro's congressional seat. She's been in office forever. She's, embedded in the community.
Fossilized.
The Democratic National Committee is sending people to these seats to help get these folks reelected. They're pouring money into these local races. These are races that traditionally both national parties have basically ignored because the outcome was almost a given. And yet the Democrats are now terrified of losing seats that they should not have had any doubt they were going to win.
I think Lucas has Logan has a very good chance of winning. You look at bias in polling, very, very super blue state, people unwilling to really admit what they truly want to do. You look at the momentum change. It could be another reduction of numbers in the squad or those empathetic to that cause. I'd like your opinion. Would our listeners, I'm sure. Did Trump make a mistake of blowing off 60 Minutes? I say no.
I don't think he did.
Not at all.
Honestly, Trump has done so many media interviews. He's basically done any almost any interview he could get into his schedule. He's done major mainstream media. He's done podcasts. He's been on social media. He's been everywhere. We know the 60 Minutes interview was going to be a hit piece. In fact, I'm not 100% sure of this, but I think part of the problem was that the piece was being driven by Norah O'Donnell, who was part of Hillary Clinton's cabal back in 2016. If our listeners will remember, there was I believe about a dozen media figures in the news that it had come out had been consulting with Hillary Clinton, during the campaign. Well, Norah O'Donnell was one of these. CBS was deeply implicated in this. So why should he sit for yet another hit piece?
It's only his to lose. I think you let Kamala speak for herself, literally and figuratively. Even if it's going to be a puffball answer, why risk it? Just have her out there. They'll make that little opening when Trump denied this debate. So we have Miss Harris here, and she'll get into I was born middle class, the brilliance of a school bus, and the unhinging the old with the new. And the more time she's in front of America, the less likable she is, just like Hillary.
And you also have to remember, yes, Trump turned down an interview from 60 Minutes. It is, as far as anybody can tell, the only interview he's turned down. Kamala Harris has done a grand total of 3 interviews, one of which was with Tim Walz. She hasn't appeared on MSNBC, who is incredibly friendly to her. She refuses to go on Fox. She has turned down almost everybody. She did an interview with Oprah. She did a local interview.
It was a crash and burn. And the local Philly was a crash and burn.
Right. And she did the CNN interview with Tim Walz. That's it. She has turned everybody else down. So why would it be a big deal that Trump turned down one interview request when Harris has turned down dozens?
I think it was a good move. I think his internal polling suggests a high probability of a good outcome. Why do it? Just let her self-destruct herself. That's what he should have done with Biden in the debates in 2020. Just if someone's digging a hole, let them keep digging. Pete Rose, you're a baseball fan. Your thoughts? He died. I think he was 83, something like that.
83. Pete Rose, no matter what you might have thought of his gambling problem, he was a baseball legend, the all-time hitting record holder. the all-time MVP. He was amazing to watch. They called him Charlie Hustle because he always gave 110% when he was on the field. It was never about him, it was always about the team. This is somebody that, yes, he had some trouble with gambling. And quite frankly, if he had just admitted and said, yes, I had this problem, accepted some help, he would be in the Hall of Fame today. And he did state, I believe not too long ago, that that was his one regret, that he let his ego get in the way of moving forward and ultimately being in the Hall of Fame.
I still think I agree with what you're saying. 100%. I don't know who was advising him. Again, he was no Men's a great baseball uh, player, but not exactly someone that was involved with astrophysics. However, I think he did get screwed. I think a logical and a just punishment would have been maybe a 10-year ban, and now you're back in action, and obviously being on probation. I think he got it was an overkill.
Yeah, I honestly, I think even 10 years would have been overkill. Um, the fact of the matter is he never bet on any game that he could influence. He was just betting. So, it's not like he was throwing games or anything. He wasn't even using inside information. So, yes, I mean, should there have been some punishment? Yes. What happened was a travesty.
I would agree on all of it. Well, another great show, and it is making, as we're talking, the report on the uh, second second husband or his VP second husband is starting to build up a little bit. Accused of assaulting ex girlfriend, claim so. We will see.
Yeah,
Slapped her so hard. So we will
we
see what
we
happens,
will
but
keep an
certainly
eye
not a
on
good
that.
thing.
Yeah, we will keep an eye on that story and report what happens.
Excellent. And thank you, Dr. Lopkin. As always, another great show with great insights from you. And we'll be back next week, and our listeners can give their input, can't they?
Yes, let's hear what you have to say. You can go to xvadio.com/connect. You can also find us at the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. Message us there. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com, the Carnivore Radio website, Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
I thank you, Dr. Lopkin, and see you next week.
We'll see you then.